Could you please stand, everybody, if you're able? Make sure your phones are on silent or off. If you'd like to turn towards that door, and would you like to welcome our very special guests, Rocky Hodges, Van May, and Rico Abreu. Now, before you sit down, if you look underneath your seats, there is a mystery door prize. Check under your seats to see whether you've got... I'm just kidding. So we've got some special guests that we need to thank, in particular JCD Trucking, to Jeff and Cheryl DeFoss from Minneapolis in Iowa. Thank you so much for supporting Doug. Incidentally, if you look towards the back, there's a gentleman in a red shirt and a sketchy-looking hat. Looks like a Miami car dealer. With a much better suntan. Would you please put your hands together for Mr. Doug Clark, everybody? Tony Bokhoven, how's your day so far?
It's pretty awesome so far. How's yours?
Mate, I mean, I'm sitting closer to Rocky. He asked me, he said, can you just keep a little bit of social distance between us? Isn't this cool? I mean, one is slightly younger than the other two. I don't know if you can spot which one. Tony, this was a massive success last year. Doug Clark saw it in Australia, the classic brekkie, and you got to experience the real version last year.
Yeah, it was spectacular. A room much like this, full of people that just are unbelievably passionate about sprint car racing and celebrating the heroes of our sport. And, you know, last year when you were all here, that was what we had so much fun doing, right? We had a great group of guys here last year that really helped build our sport, and today is no different. We have 3 drivers that were instrumental in their own way, in their own regions of the country, in their part of the sport. And, you know, I think with what we saw with Rico the last few days here, there's no question that he will be a legend in our sport.
Boy, you get some love, Rico. It's incredible, isn't it? And grab that mic and feel free anytime. How is it for you everywhere you go, mate? People just adore you, Rico. You must get a sense of that.
I just am. I'm really thankful for it all. You know, and just that it's just always been really important to me as I grew up in life. That first positive impression to everybody was and how meaningful it is. So we, you know, my parents were pretty hard on me about that, just going through my younger days of my career, and knew that I guess it would pay off in the long run. And you know, there's a lot nicer people out there than anybody thinks.
Rico, you work really hard on your social media. You have a camera crew here working with you pretty well everywhere you go. That's such a huge part of your racing. Imagine Rocky Hodges if you had to have a camera with you everywhere you went back in the day. There'd be a lot of shots of Tony Bokhoven standing behind you, I'm pretty sure. But Rico, how do you work out in your mind, all right, I'm doing this today, we're going to shoot this, or do you shoot everything?
I think it's important that you know, we have people with us. I have a great group support system, and I have a great group that's helped me get to this portion of my career. And you know, it's important that we capture this stuff for later on down the road, and for people to that don't necessarily get to be here. You know, you make them feel like they're here by sharing that on social media. Social media is such a powerful tool nowadays, and you know, it's a big part of my life, and sharing that with everybody, and growing and helping, honestly, the sport grow. You know, if we can dab into other markets that are outside of racing, and you bring those people to racing, it's just getting another eye or another seat in the stands filled, and that's all really, really important to us.
Rico, it's such a fine line. Social media can be so vicious. There's such an amazing part of it that you are so proactive with. It doesn't take that and someone's offended, somebody wants to respond in anger. A very prominent driver said to me the other night, 20 years ago, if you wanted to have something to say and argue with Steve Kinzer, you paid $40, you went down to the pits, you stood there, and then you didn't say a word because you were too scared. Now, you pick that up and you can attack anybody. How is that for you? Because it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, we've really worked towards like great positivity on our accounts. So you don't see much. I guess they would call it cyberbullying, but for our program, it's the more positive impression you create, I feel like your race fans kind of take care of the negativity, and like I said, you could go through all of our comments on our pages, and the interaction's very high, and people are very positive on there, and they want to see us do good because I feel like they have that feel-good sensation through it all, and they feel like they're living through this success with us, and that's why I have these people following me, and because we make them feel like they're a part of it, and that's what's really important to us.
Yeah, I think with when you look at your social media and you see how you engage different age ranges, and with Gus, right, the younger crowd, which we need to continue to work on. I got to believe they're coming to your T-shirt trailer looking for Gus as much as they are looking for you.
Everybody wants to see Gus. But it's and the younger generation, the kids, that's the future of our sport. So it's important that those kids have a good time at the races. They get to see me. I feel like they feel like they're close to me because of probably our height range, and I look a little bit different to them, and it's something that they never forget and then they get to go see me race and see me do good, and so that's why it's important for us to do good on the racetrack and sit at the if we go to the merchandise trailer or sign autographs at the races. I never want to have a fan have a bad experience with me, and we I stay as long as I can after the races or at the merchandise trailer, and it can be difficult at times on nights that I don't necessarily race good. We put a lot of work into this, and it can be difficult to just keep that smile when when I really, really want to do good and I don't do good, and but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to the fans how I do. They just want to be there to be able to see me.
It's really amazing when you think about back when Van and Rocky, when you were racing, social media was National Speed Sport News. Right, and you had to wait, and if you were like me, you waited till the races were over, and sometimes you called the racetrack and hoped that they updated their answering machine so you could find out who won, right? But today, you have so much more interaction and touch points through social media than what we ever would have had, and the way that it benefits your sponsors too is just unbelievably better than what it ever was before.
It's huge. It's a really powerful tool, on the marketing side, on the sponsorship side, on the race results. You can find them like that now, and we have some really, really good people in our sport that do a good job with it all.
I really wish that our sport hasn't evolved one bit. The one bit I wish it hasn't is enclosed trailers, because I think nothing ever beat the excitement of being on the highway and seeing an open trailer with a race car. I mean, I don't know about you, I see a featherlight, it could be a guy with a lawn mowing contract, and I get all excited, like, oh, what is it, what is it?
It's not every day you see a Corvette pulling a race car down the road.
Perfect segue, you saw where I was going with that. Hands up if you've seen a yellow Corvette Stingray that was towing a sprint car once in your life. It's a good time to meet our friend with the best lamb chops outside of the bloke that lived in Memphis. This would be the wonderful Van May, everybody. Please put your hands together for Van. This guy's a trip, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. What you get is what you see with Van. Van, what was your first racing memory? Where did racing first come into your radar?
When I was, when I was about 8 years old, we started racing go-karts in El Paso.
I just love that you said El Paso. That's a spaghetti sauce in Australia, so I'm kind of impressed with that. Did you have any, what influenced you? Did you have any heroes at the time? Where did you see racing? Why was racing on your radar?
Well, I didn't have any heroes at that time, but go-karts was where we started racing, and then we would go to the races, to the super modified races at night, and there was a few people that I remember being the people to beat, but pretty soon it all just wound up that I got to do it myself.
I've seen some of the pictures of your go-karts. How long did you race them for? Gee, they look primitive when you look back on it, but they would have been plenty fast enough for you back in the day.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
Can we turn that the fold back up just a little bit, please, Matt? The go-karts themselves, I saw the pictures of the ones that you showed me just recently. They were pretty primitive, but at the time they were plenty fast enough for you. How long did you race karts for?
I probably ran them from when I was about 8 or 9 years old to 11. I got out of it pretty soon. Around 61 or so was the last I raced.
So bitumen, like asphalt, or just only on dirt, or where?
The go-karts that I ran were all on asphalt. We never ran dirt at all.
I'm glad you saw the light.
Well, I grew up.
You know, Rocky, we were lucky to live in a state where per capita there's more racetracks than anywhere in the country, right? And so back before sprint cars, there were stock cars at Oskaloosa and Eldon, Iowa, the state fairgrounds in Des Moines. What was your first venture into racing back in the day?
Well, we had our own racetrack. My family on a farm at my grandfather's house. So I started at 4 years old, and that quickly through the years, because my father, there were 13 kids in the family, so they had their own heat races and races in themselves, but it turned into much more than that. And finally, after years, it was called Hodges Speedway in Madrid, Iowa, that we started having too big of a following, and my grandfather put kibosh on it because of liability even back then. But it was very memorable because there were hogs and cows and everything just running free on the same property where we were racing when we were racing. So I'll never forget hitting a peg once. The peg fell right on me. So that was just a little bit, but...
So you had a four-legged pace truck, basically.
Yeah, right. But, yeah, from there we just, it was just kind of a natural thing. We always had a go-kart, no matter if we had a track. Later in years, in my teen years, we lived on a lake, and my father built me a go-kart track there that we could just go play on and have a good time, and it just has always been a part of my life, the trying to slide through the corners and throw dust and just have a good time.
The stock car scene in central Iowa was pretty big in the 80s and the late 70s, and there was that run of Oskaloosa, the state fairgrounds, up to Marshalltown, Eldon, Iowa. Talk about that a little bit, because you were quite the stock car guy too.
Yeah, we were lucky because we were very successful with late models and stock cars. I ran them about 10 years before I ever got into a sprint car, and drove for a lot of very good teams and had success. I actually am the one responsible, per se, for Billy Moyer getting into late models, because Bill Sr. hired me and wanted me to come go pick up a race car in Kentucky called the Kentucky Wildcat. That is the car that Billy Moyer won a tremendous amount of his features in. And I ran it for about a year, and I'm not sure that we ever lost a race. We won just about every place we went. The car was just, it was one of those things that worked. It didn't, you couldn't screw it up. And so the second year, Bill told me, he said, well, I don't think we're going to need you this year. And I thought, that's kind of weird. We just won every race we went to, you know. He said, well, I just don't think we're going to race. And Billy had the best of everything always. I found out that Billy took my car and went from there on, started racing it, and to tremendous success. Just a phenomenal race car driver. But
Yeah, for sure.
We were lucky enough to run through all of Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri through those years, Nebraska, and with good success with all my race stock car days.
I'm just looking at Tony's face. I mean, to me, look at him. I mean, not for long because you can't do that, but look at that smile. If you ever doubted how much he and I love what we do, Tony, you and I get so many times, you know, oh, wow, you know, you seem to really love what you do. We are just as much fans as you are, it's just that we get to hold this thing in front. The way that the relationship that you have with Rocky, and Rico, you will totally get this because you engage fans in such a passionate way. Tony, tell me about your first experience with Rocky and how that has shaped your life. And did you bring the photo album?
I didn't. I told Wade the other day, I said, you know, I'm starting to feel a little bit like a weirdo because as Wade's been building up this event, right, he's been telling the story about my being a fan of Rocky and all this. And so when Wade was in Pella a week or so ago, I have a room in my house. It's just full of racing memorabilia, and I bring out these.
It's a shrine, everyone. It's a shrine.
You go to Kmart or something, you buy those photo albums, right? They have that sticky paper, and you peel them back, and you lay the photo. Well, I've got a couple of those, and you know, back in the day, social media was National Speed Sport News, and it was once a month when Open Wheel came, and so my ritual would be once my dad got done reading it, I would go through, and any place I found Rocky's name, I'd cut it out. And so I've got hundreds of clippings of just his name, no pictures, just his name. And I've got him in these photo albums, right? And but you know, Rico was touching on it a little bit ago about the youth of our sport, and that's what it was for me. Was when I was a kid, my dad was a drag racer. When he quit drag racing, we started coming here. So I was probably, I don't know, 10 maybe, something like that. But I'll never forget it. Rocky won one night driving Leonard McCarl's car, the 7X, the RC Long Phoenix Motors car. And we went to the infield afterwards, which we did every week. We'd go to the pits, and we're standing behind Rocky's car, and Rocky walks up to me, and he kind of taps me in the arm, and he says, hey, you want to sit in the winner's car? That's all it took. And I got to sit in Rocky Hodges' car. I mean, I told everybody at school the next week, I got to sit in Rocky Hodges' car. But I've been a fan of his ever since then because he took that one opportunity to let me do something as a kid that I probably would have never got to do. And I've never forgot that. I'm 50 now. And that was so 40-some years ago I got to do that. And it made such an impression on me. And so when we talk about social media and the engagement that these guys have, with their fans, it's so important because still here today, you know, I've been lucky through social media to get to know Rocky better on a different level than just, you know, remembering the days when he would race here. And I'd walk up the grandstands, and the first thing I'd do before I'd go sit down is I'd pan the pit area trying to find his car. And let me tell you, if his car went in the pits, I was mad. And it was going to be a bad night at the races. I just won't go home. But it's that important, and those kind of things you don't forget. And so getting to know him differently now, it's so cool to me. But I still, even this morning when he walked in this church, I got goosebumps for a second because it's like when you get to meet your childhood hero and get to know him better and become a friend with him, that's a pretty cool opportunity that I hope every kid that goes to the races gets to do with a guy like Rico or pick your driver. You know, it's that important.
Rico, can I ask you, and I only just thought of this, with the unique nature of your car, with the floor pan with your car, is that an easy thing to do for kids, or does that work exactly like that? How often do you put fans in your car?
We don't usually, just because after the races it's quite hot, and you know, you can. I always say you could probably run into some liability issues if someone got hurt or something, but I think it's, you know, outside of the track, if we're at a hotel parking lot or something, it's it's always fun to let the kids sit in the car. I think my torso is a little bit taller than the average kid. Obviously, just my shortness and limbs. So when the kids do sit in my car, they can't even see over the dash. So they try to figure out, why it doesn't work for them. But it's really cool for the kids to be able to come up and see. Every year they take pictures and they want to check their height with me and see if they're a little bit taller.
Do you get kids coming up the year after and the year after?
Maybe next year.
Yeah. Do you get them?
So with the access of social media, you see families are now starting to do like photo albums of each year, and I think it's really cool for people to track that. As their child grows up, and there's a boy, Colton, that sees me at the Chili Bowl every single year, and we stand right in front of the Keith Kunz Motorsports trailer in the same exact spot. And I think we're on 8 years now of pictures. And I just seen him. He came to the 360 Nationals. They're from Oklahoma. And in January, he wasn't taller than me. And now we just took a picture, and he's a little bit taller. So, but we just have it. We have a lot of fun doing stuff like that.
Van, tell me about sprint car racing in Texas when you were starting to race.
Where I came from, we only had the one track, and if you wanted to go race anywhere else, it was far away, like 280 miles or 400 miles. It was more a sport at that point. It wasn't where you could make money enough to race for a living. You had to do it just as a hobby, pretty much. And that's how I wound up in Pennsylvania.
So word got through to you in Texas that PA was where they raced longer and they raced for more money. Is that kind of how it got to you?
Well, it kind of came about by the fact that my brother came up to Pennsylvania, and he met Bobby Allen and Opperman and Dick Tobias and some of those people, and he came up here to race, and that's what he intended to do. I stayed home because I really wasn't equipped to race. I had a car and a trailer and no real spares or anything, and I stayed home at our local track in Horizon Speedway and planning on racing there because I was more ready to do it from where I was at. And our track closed down, so when our track closed down, it just made it an easier decision to go to Pennsylvania and race what turned out to be for way more money and geographically much closer. You could live in Pennsylvania, like I live in Hanover, and I can go 5 minutes to Lincoln Speedway and 30 minutes to Williams Grove and 30 minutes to Baps, Susky, and race 3 nights a week for way more money than anywhere.
Now, when you did go across and do that, did you go across and try it out, or did you just go, you know what, I'm going and I'll be back whenever I get back, the first time?
Well, the first time I came here, our track had already closed up, so I just came up here just kind of wide open as far as what was going to happen. I had no plans of staying, or I really spent my whole life having no plans.
I love Van. It was so... When I first caught up with him, it took me a while to find his shop, Tony, because it was Bill Wright, your great friend Bill Dubb, Van, that said, you got to meet my friend Van May. And so I drove into Hanover. It's quite narrow streets, like everything in PA is, and I eventually found his shop, and he was in the middle of building the car that he's now rebuilt and restored. And it was such an experience. He's such an amazing character. I really hope that we don't lose characters like Van because he speaks it like it is. We had breakfast at Cracker Barrel the other day, and the lady brought him, would you like a glass of water? And he said, and I'm not talking out of school, he said, as long as you haven't got your hand over the top of the glass when you give it to me. Now, he wasn't being rude about that. That just what he thinks is what he says. And that's a beautiful purity, Van. I know it's just you and that's who you are, but I love that you just tell it like it is. When you said there was only one racetrack locally to you in Texas, I just assumed that Texas was like Iowa, that you had plenty of racetracks to choose from, but was that not the case?
I'm sorry, what the question was, why did I leave Texas?
Yeah, like, was there not more tracks around that time? I'm surprised. I would have thought Texas had plenty of tracks.
Well, Texas is a big state, so it's a long ways between places. The closest racetrack we had was going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was 280 miles one way. If we wanted to go somewhere else, we went 400 miles to Phoenix or 600 miles to Dallas. So just the pure distance made it not very easy to race for more than just a hobby. You couldn't expect to travel, and at that time, our track, in proportion to what they paid, one time I had fast time, I won my heat, and I won the feature, and it paid $101. At that very same time scale, at Lincoln in Pennsylvania, they paid $700. And so there was way more able to make a race car pay for itself in Pennsylvania, and the fact that the tracks were so close. I mean, Pennsylvania used to be totally the hotbed of where people, I mean, Kenny Well migrated from Kansas City, and Bobby and Stevie Smith came from Miami, Dubby, myself, Siegel came from Texas. Pennsylvania was definitely the spot to go to if you wanted to race sprint cars. This was before the world of outlaws, and so it paid more money, closer, and I didn't go to Pennsylvania because I'd been reading about Pennsylvania. I just wound up here basically because my brother was here and he had all the tools.
That's one of the big differences too, right? Is back then, you know, Wade, today you can go online and you can order race car parts and have them shipped to you. But back then, Van, you were making all the parts for your race cars. You were building your own chassis back then.
Well, for sure, it wasn't like today where you could just have a good credit card and get online and get all your parts to put your kit together. It was just a different way, and if you wanted something, you either built it or just still wanted it. You know.
Can I ask a question? What was the cost of racing like then? Like if you won the feature, like what do you think you spent to like? You said you raced for $101 and then you moved to Pennsylvania and raced for $700.
Well, it's hard to say like the motors that we ran were basically just a Chevrolet crate motor that you got for $200 or something, and it ran hot for a couple of weeks till it got broke in, and the tires were maybe $60 or something, but it was all, and the gas was 36 cents a gallon, so it was all in proportion to everything else. It's just that at the very same time frame all this was going on and paying $100, and they were paying $700 and more in Pennsylvania. I mean, I didn't migrate to Pennsylvania because there was nothing in Pennsylvania that made me want to go except for the fact that racing was what you could do.
Yeah, we to talk about the state of Pennsylvania, we spend a lot of time there racing, and you know, I'm very passionate about their Pennsylvania Speed Week, and it's 10 races in a row, and what's so unique about that event is we stay at the same hotel, and our furthest drive's an hour and a half, and we hit like 7 different racetracks. And yeah, it's a big week, and it's a lot of fun.
Rico, you're probably one of the very few people that Pennsylvania fans cut a little bit of slack on. Have you hands up if you've been to Pennsylvania to watch racing? Man, those people are brutal. I mean, aren't they? I mean, if you beat any of them, or if you even show up in front of Bear Hill, you're going to get embarrassed. But they cut you a little bit of slack, I imagine. Do they?
I enjoy getting a race there, and you know, it's Pennsylvania fans are really, really passionate about sprint car racing, and you know, we got the opportunity to win at Williams Grove this year, and they started booing a little bit, and then everybody started cheering. So it's a really cool experience just to get the opportunity to race in Pennsylvania, and I love the fans there.
Rocky, you've been nodding your head a lot. I get the feeling you're enjoying this as much as you are because yeah.
This is very good. You know, I mean, the one thing that I really noticed, and I really noticed it here, was due to social media, you watch every night if you can. I do. I watch 2 or 3 races a night, it seems, and you really feel like through that, you know the drivers. You feel like you're really, like you could walk up to them and say hello almost because of social media and being the way as good as it's produced and everything. That I walk down through the thing here, and I know some people, but I don't know a lot of people, but you feel like you do because you're such a big, feel like you're a part of them, and Rico's team does a tremendous job with social media, and you all feel connected, say, to him because of that. And I think that's a great thing, and we always tried to really show our focus to kids after the races. We unless there was a really bad altercation, we tried to always forget everything and just focus on the kids, because they were genuine, nothing fake, nothing. They wanted to come touch you and see your car and climb in your car, and we didn't care about liability as much then as today. You have to, I get it. Yeah, it's too bad, but that's the world we live in. And as I go through there, it just seems like you know everybody, which that's good. It really brings a personal side to racing.
And as much as you do know them, we don't. Right?
Exactly right. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
You know them, but you don't know. They don't know who you are. Nothing. It's and that's okay. But it's
because people judge you, Rocky, on what they see on the racetrack. They don't know the day you had. They don't know what's going on in your life. They don't know where your head was at when sometimes you just flat out make a mistake. People are very judgy on what they think. Oh, that's Rocky Hodges, the driver. That must be Rocky Hodges, the man. That's not always the same thing.
Oh, it's no, and it could be reversed to you, or you. It's just depends on the time, and we always focused on the fans and the kids. You know more about what I won than I do. That's the straight truth. As far as, we needed to race, we needed to make money, but we never really, we weren't keeping score. It was all.
You had Tony for that.
No.
Would you like to know when you won in 1982 at Knoxville on December 3?
It's uncomfortable right now. No, that's true, and it's fans like Tony, that Rico and Van. We have special fans, but we just have a lot of fans, and you always have to keep that in mind, that people are coming and paying to watch you do something you love, and your heart's into it and their heart's into it, and you always had to keep that in mind, and we tried to.
Doug Wolfgang, remember how uncomfortable Doug was with the idea of being a hero?
Yeah.
He said, I don't understand why people want to be treating me like this to do something I was going to do anyway. So he was very uncomfortable with the fame kind of thing,
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And today it's, to Rocky's point, you feel like you know those guys, but back then, like when I was a kid too, Wade, you got to the racetrack and that was your exposure to those guys. So the fans, you were super intense about it, right? You knew who you liked and you knew who you didn't. Like, I knew that every time, it didn't matter. When Randy Smith would pull on the racetrack, I'd just boo the hell out of him because, he was a big competitor, right? There was Scott Richard and TJ Gitt. Yeah, right? So you knew, though, but back then you knew. And today on social media, you can dislike another driver, but it's not as intense as it was then because you have way more connection to it.
Doug Clark standing over in the corner. Look at him. He looks like a statue, actually. Have a look at him.
Go hang your jackets on him, folks. It's okay.
Just, ladies, you can hug up on him, but no one else is allowed to. Doug, I got to hang out with Doug Wolfgang and Doug Clark together. They're school friends. They've been mates since they were little, riding push bikes around Sioux Falls. And I said to Doug Wolfgang, did you know back then that your friend would become the most recognised flagman in the world of sprint car racing? And he said, yeah, so what? Didn't he, Doug? But what his point was, he's my friend. He didn't give a rat's A55 that his mate was a really good flag waver. He was his friend. And that's where Doug was very good at separating the two things. And Rico, you would have to relate to that. And I'm going to bring up our favourite driver. Sorry, Rocky, but the 22 Pennzoil Eldon Racing entry. Thank you, Rico, for bringing the wild child back in the 22 Pennzoil car, because, oh, my God. I get all goosey, mate. I saw Jack run the Eldora in 1992 and it changed my life. So I know what Tony's saying with Rocky, but you were like that with Jack, right?
Oh yeah, Jack he's my guy. I get sweaty hands every time I get around him. But I seen him yesterday after the races, and he's always really excited to see me and see me do good. And we've become great friends over the years. And what really intrigued me about Jack is he's always just happy no matter what happened. Like when he came out and first drove my family's race car, I think it was 2018 or 19 at the Trophy Cup in California. All he wanted was his lawn chair right next to the trailer, and he never went and looked at the racetrack. He just sat in the lawn chair, and they told him it's your turn to get in the car, and he went out on the track, and then he came back and sat back in his lawn chair, and it was it was just we've just had some incredible memories, and he's just always smiling, and I'm just so I feel like that I want to be like that. Like I just want to just sit there and smile all the time.
I apologise for the building that I'm in at the moment, but I did something really stupid and I jumped out of a plane on Monday that was going to land anyway. And I was cursing you, Tony, the whole time, going, why isn't Bokhoven next to me now? And I showed Jack the other day, I showed him the video of me jumping out of the plane. And he said, man, that takes some balls. And I nearly cried. That's like Elvis telling someone they're a good singer. Like when Hort says you got balls, it's like, I'm taking that. What was that like, Rico? I mean, you're right, he's just such a genuine person, but to have him as your wingman, and he was so grateful. I talked about it with him like a couple of weeks ago. That's something he'll remember forever that you did that.
Yeah, I just thought it was really important that, that everybody he kind of went out with a bang. I feel like he was, his career, he had so much success in that Pennzoil car. And, my first time going to a sprint car race, I got to see him at Calistoga Speedway. And he was in the Pennzoil car and in the late 90s. And I was, that's one of my all-time memories is they did that Harvest Classic at Calistoga, and it was 3 nights of racing, and I'm pretty sure Jack swept all 3 nights. And my dad would take me down in the pits and after the races, and I wanted his signature and Steve Kinzer's, and that's what really made me. He's honestly a big reason of what made me fall in love with racing and want to be a race car driver.
Absolutely. Van, tell me about a Corvette Stingray, and when did it come into your life? Because, God, that's a beautiful car, mate.
I had a couple of Corvettes during my time, and the yellow Corvette that I brought up here, it's funny how people make a big deal out of pulling with a Corvette, but that's really all I had. And so I just adapted and put a hitch on it, and the fact that it was a Corvette was convenient at being a neat car, but it would not have been possible had my brother not been here and had, like I said, the tools, the equipment, and the jacks and stuff. It just all came together kind of by circumstance that I came to Pennsylvania because he was already here, and I came with a Corvette because I already had it. So it was simple as that.
There you go.
What did it tow like, by the way?
Well, it didn't have any trouble going up hills.
It probably didn't get good mileage, but I bet the chicks loved it, mate, because what a stylish... I wish you could make a die cast of it, because, Rico, I know you'd have that in your collection if you could, right? Because that's... What a cool concept.
My full intentions are, I have another yellow Corvette that I just got. I went to Tennessee and got it, and actually Jamie's here somewhere. He helped provide the transportation to get it there. But I have a Corvette, and I'm building a trailer that's it's an open trailer where it's cool because the car will be exposed. But at some point, probably this year, I'll have a Corvette and a neat trailer and the car that's in the museum right now, and I'll take some pictures of it and send them to you.
Man, Tony, I don't know, have you seen the car yet in the Hall of Fame?
It's beautiful.
It's still got the dirt on the tyres from Williams Grove, and Bill Dubb said, Van said you're not having it if you clean the tyres. Like, you wanted it to be legit pacing the field. What was that like, to finally pace the field after winning that race all those years ago?
Well, it was an honor that they even asked me to. It was kind of hard. I was stuck between the pace truck and the front of the field, and it was kind of hard to just idle along. But it was an honor, and I won it. I won the National Open back in '77, a long time ago, and it was kind of neat to get to reminisce about how things used to be.
46 years ago, something like that. Incredible. 150 laps the race was then, is that right?
It was 150 laps. It was broken up into 3 50-lap segments. Wow.
So what you're saying is that Rico's a wuss. He only ran... You can say that.
You know, you go ahead.
I told you, Tony, didn't I?
Yeah.
What was it like to do 3 50-lap races, 150 laps? You came out of the B main to win that, didn't you?
Well, yes, when I went there, I wasn't fast enough and qualified. I went out real late, and it was a daytime show, and I went out real late, and I probably had 26 quick time or something, and I think the first 25 qualified, so I had to run B main. I'd rather call it a B main than a consi. But I won the B main and started in the back, and it was like 3 50-lap segments that you knew it was going to be a long day, but everything worked out that particular one for me.
Rocky, was there a certain point in your career where you suddenly realised, hang on, I'm doing this at an elite level? Was there ever a watershed moment where you went, this is the big time?
You know, I don't know that there was. You know, it's I didn't really look at it that way. You know, I always just looked at it that I got to race. You know, I never thought I was anybody, you know, other than a competitor that a lot of times got to be pretty competitive and got lucky and won a few. And no, I not until now, you know. I mean, it's kind of weird sitting up here, even being asked to come join the group, you know, because, you know, I was just a racer. You know, I was the same as the Randy Smith or even Wolfie when we ran back here, and just another one of the guys, you know. I mean, Bill Robinson, Jerry Potter, all the Lasowski when he started was just a pup, and Tony, I remember him very, very well back in the very early days, you know, always, every night coming and finding me, and, you know, you get used to that following. But no, I never did ever consider myself, you know, nothing but just a racer.
Rocky, for me, Friday night was Claremont Speedway night in Western Australia, and that's where you raced as well. But Friday night, for me, was my escape from anything that happened during that week. So you guys were heroes to us because it was an escape from reality. whether my mum and dad were blueing at home or they had a bad day at school or any of that stuff, my Friday night escape was watching you guys do what you do. So whilst you're just doing circles, to us it's life-changing. Is that a strange thing for you? I don't know about you guys, but for me, that changed my life watching Speedway, and it still does today.
Well, I understand that because of the love of the sport and seeing the competition and seeing people that do turn into your heroes and different things, because, you know, throughout life we all have somebody or something we look up to, and to be, I never considered myself one of those, even though I considered a lot of people good fans, you know, but I never considered myself, you know, much. But, you know, going to Australia was one of the very highlights of my career, and seeing the fans come and stack themselves 10 deep, that stand up by the fence, hold on to the fence, the front ones, and then be 10 or 20 deep off the fence all the way around the racetrack. And it just said so much for the people there wanting you there, and to see you, and to see the Americans race on their track against their people.
Bob Trossel needs a posthumous award for services to Australian sprint car racing, because he was the lifeline for America to race in Australia, but for Australians to race in America. At some point you had to think, I was a kid racing on my grandpa's farm behind a couple of cows, I'm guessing, and then suddenly you're racing on the other side of the world. Isn't it been amazing that racing can do that?
Well, again, that was a tremendous honor, and I agree totally with what, you know, Bob never received as much recognition as he deserved, especially for the technology and the perseverance of being dedicated with, you know, really no money, you know, and just by hard work and love and dedication to it, and then being honored to go, you know, across the water to go actually, again, do what you love. You know, I was fortunate enough to take my father there, you know, and how's it get better than that, you know, and go to another country and see other cultures, and it's just wonderful memories, and very, very thankful for it.
You know, Wade, when you were over at my house, I showed you that picture of Rocky and Mike Sweeney, which is Patty Hodgenschild's brother, standing in front of a car that said USA down the side. And we talked about this when I was in Australia in January, just the sense of pride that Americans have going to race in Australia is, you know, it's a big deal. And the amount of times I got asked, do Americans really pay attention to what's going on in Australia? And I think in the off season, everybody's focus turns to Australia because it's a unique time.
All right, who was that? Who's looking to leave already? That sounded like a Siri map direction right then.
But
Fan,
you mentioned Bob Trossel, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. In your career, Rocky, you had a really unique opportunity to drive for two guys that built their own chassis and were very technology focused, in Leonard McCarl and Bob Trossel. And what was that like? Because, boy, you couldn't pick two different people, right? Leonard McCarl was one bag of chips, and then you had Bob Trossel, who was way different.
Bob was always so easy. You know, nothing was ever work to him, even though you would see him sitting there and working his butt off and sweating. It wasn't work to him at all, and very easy, and it was nonchalant racing. You know, hey, we're gonna go to Peevely tonight, and okay, you know, and just get in the car and go. And to where Leonard wasn't really that way. He tremendous knowledge of Leonard, but it was hard for Leonard, I think, to not drive, you know, because he liked to drive, but he was so he had so in-depth knowledge of not only just sprint cars, of what they did, how they worked, as did Bob, but Leonard was so much different because he was like Rico and like Van. Well, you know, if they thought something, you were gonna know it. If you did something right, you might not know it as much, but if you did something wrong, you're gonna know it, you know? But the one thing I remember the most about Leonard was it didn't matter what happened, as long as you were given everything you got. You know, I'll never forget, you know, flipping the thing down the front straightaway or whatever and come in, the car's bent. I'll never forget the car was bent over in the front probably 4 inches, and the torsion tubes were bent back, and he said, I can fix it. We made it out. We made it out for the feature. I think that happened in Oklahoma somewhere. And he said, you'll never know it. I thought, I can see this thing, you know. But he was right. You know, in the end, it didn't matter what I thought because I believed him no matter what. It worked, you know. I had that faith in him.
You drove another really famous car for Gil Sonner, the 47 car. You know, I think if you looked at the history of the Knoxville Raceway, there's probably in every other picture, there's a picture of one of Gilly's cars. Yeah. What was it like driving for him?
Well, that's completely different again, because Gilbert, it was on Gilbert's timeline. He was late everywhere he went, always. And it just frustrated me so much because he was the last one on the gate and the last one to leave. And Gilbert did, even though he had a lot of financing behind him, and that started even back when I drove for him. We got the Casey's money, which basically was just Lamberti's money back then, which was a great help. But Gilbert was so much Gilbert as far as his junkyard or salvage business that he wouldn't spend it. You know, he still wanted to do it his way, no matter what. You know, like clear to the end, he had unlimited finances per se, and he wouldn't buy the stuff he needed to win, because he said, well, if I buy that, I'm just going to be as fast as them, and I want to beat them, so I want to do it my way. Yeah. That was always Gilbert's philosophy, and he always was trying to reinvent or make it better or faster or lighter, always lighter, like van stuff. It was just always super lightweight, you know, weights, horsepower, and he always said that. And it was a good time. That was a family deal, because my father built Gilbert's building, and since I was always hanging at the junkyard and always around the Sonner family. Huh.
Van, tell me about your experiences at Knoxville Raceway.
It was pretty brief. The first time I ever showed up at Knoxville was for the 25th anniversary, and I was running the Ben Cook house car. And when we unloaded, it was the format where points were important. And when we unloaded, I had fast time. Actually, I had fast time and second fast time of my night. So I started out with 200 points. They inverted everybody, and so I started in the back of the heat. Rocky was in my heat, and I ran second to him in my heat. And then the feature was arranged to where I believe they put first time inverted to 8th. So I started, this is in the preliminary feature. So I started 8th and I ran 7th or so, just kind of maintained my position. And I accumulated the 5th most amount of points for my night. And for the money race, Steve Kinzer had apparently accumulated the 5th the most amount of points for his night. So he started 9th and I started 10th. And when they dropped the green, he smeared me into the wall, and my race was over. So when it came to counting money, I only got to watch. But I did, the experience was good in the fact that I was in a fast race car, and it's always fun to be fast. but it was pretty short-lived.
Van, you explained it to Tony and I outside about, going where other people aren't. That's the way you describe. Can you remember how you just described that to us?
Well, it was something to the effect of like you heard Donnie talking last night about where you go where the others aren't. Where he went, I already was.
Isn't he beautiful? God, I love Van, mate. Put your hands together. This is just...
This has been 50 years ago, and I don't just go to sleep at night worrying about what took place on that given night, but it was just racing, but I was definitely on the wrong end of the stick.
Rico, why is Knoxville so important? Why is it so special?
Definitely the history that has been driven here into this event. Yeah, I mean, you guys know when it comes to this is the granddaddy of them all, no matter how you look at it. Knoxville Raceway, Knoxville Nationals, they do an amazing job here, and the history of the race wins with Donnie Schatz and Steve Kinzer, and I love the memory of Tim Schaefer beating Donnie Schatz. I always like to see, as big as a fan of Donnie I am, I always like to see somebody go up and challenge him. And I didn't really get to see Steve through his era of dominance, but I would have loved it to be able to witness that. And I think what makes this event so unique is one, the access the fans have to everything, the camping, the unbelievable racing, the track surface, the beautiful facility, and and Knoxville as a whole, they reinvest their money back into these events, and they make it bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And with updating scoreboards and bleachers, and the staff members are so kind here, and it's that's what makes this place successful. And a lot of it too is you guys, you and Tony, and and the gentleman that does the radio station down below. But it's you guys are a big impact in the sport, and I love listening to you guys talk, and it's just an amazing place to be at, and I love every bit of it.
Rico, yesterday I went down to the Credentials building, and they have a big wheel track set up in there. And I was watching basically the whole management team of Knoxville Raceway. There's only about 30 kids there on big wheels, and every one of the Knoxville admin team was there in the shop making this race happen. And I thought to myself, no disrespect to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but I very much doubt that the admin of Indy are inside a little building watching kids go around. And Tony, that showed me more the heart of this place and what you're talking about, Rico.
Yeah, I think with everything that's went on in sprint car racing just this year, and all the discussions about purses and pays and all this kind of stuff, it's beyond the money, and that's what makes the Knoxville Nationals what it is. It's about the events that happen off the racetrack. Wade, you were part of those discussions. We've spent the better part of 3 months meeting once a week talking about what can we do for fans that would give them a memory when they left that didn't happen on the racetrack. And that's where the big wheel race came from, right? It's like if we can have some drivers show up and these kids get a race, and maybe Rico's the pit guy for a particular kid. Those are the kind of moments that matter for race fans, young and old. And I think that's why this race becomes so special to everybody.
Rico, how do you plan your schedule? Like, at what point do you sit, or are you doing that now?
I don't have much time, but I think that I look at my free time as when I get to sit in my race car and go out on the track, to be honest. So I have an unbelievable team that helps me do all this, and Doug was calling me at 4 a.m. this morning making sure I was going to be here.
Doug? He was just going to bed.
No, but I think it's a good balance for me to stay active and doing these things, and it's what keeps me sane, I think, and I just enjoy it all.
But how do you map out your year, and at what point do you do that? Do you change that during the year and go, oh, okay, we can go here now, but how do you How do you map out where you go?
Usually the races that make sense. So we stay in between with the World of Outlaws, the All-Stars, and then obviously Pennsylvania has some very unique speed weeks. And you have to, as I've gotten older and matured as a race car driver and a business owner and a race team, it's really important to me that my guys don't get wore out trying to run 200 races a year, and because they're really the backbone of my team, and for them to be driving across the country to race a race that isn't as important, that might take away from a week before the Knoxville Nationals, and they're coming into the biggest race of the year wore out. So it's important for me to maybe take a weekend off and not be zigzagging back and forth to all these races. But between the All-Stars and the World of Outlaws and the High Limit Series, and I think it's really important for us to get to Knoxville before the Nationals and just get a little bit of seat time here, because things do change throughout the season, and and ultimately it's if we can get a good balance at a lot of these tracks, then like this year, our balance of our race car has been working a lot the same at every racetrack. So we haven't had to fight the car too much on setup-wise, which makes it really nice.
Rocky, how many races did you run a year traditionally in the busiest time of your career?
I don't know.
Tony, how many races did Rocky...
Well, in 1986...
No, I don't know, but we, for a couple of years there, we followed the All-Stars. Well, for a lot of years. A couple of years we followed the Outlaws. But the one thing that we did do, which I am pretty proud of, is we always tried to help the sport by not running, when we started running sanctioned events as the All-Stars or Outlaws or whatever, we didn't run probably a handful through my career of local races. We only ran the sanctioned events because we wanted to support them to make them grow to where people couldn't come see you on Saturday night at a track that wasn't sanctioned. That it tried to make it have a draw to build the sanctioning bodies up to where it can get, like today, at $250,000 or $1 million or whatever it pays to win. You have to go to those races to see those kind of racers and kind of people. But I want to touch back on one thing that happened to me this week is Terry McCarl. I talked to him quite a bit, and I learn more from him because he remembers so many things I forgot. That he said, I won 8 heat races here, like last year, I think he said, or the year before. And he said, I know I got the record on that. And I'll never forget Leonard McCarl telling me the first night, he said, okay, you're going to start in the back because we qualified good. And he said, go out, go up in the cushion, way in the cushion, which the track was short because it was early. He said, run her wide open. We won 13 out of 16 heat races that year. And he said, I won 8 and thought I had the record and went back and looked at that. And he said, not close. But that's all I'm saying that's all in trust of Leonard. Because, it's just like Ricky tells Rico he can go do something, the car will do it. It's going to do it. I mean, it's going to happen. And it's just amazing the bond and the trust that drivers can get in mechanics and all their helpers telling them to do things, even today. I mean, it's one of a highlight that I didn't know, and I didn't know it when I did it. I had no clue because I knew we had a good chance at winning a heat race, and we won a lot of heat races, but I couldn't tell you if it was 5 or 6 or whatever it was because it didn't matter. But, I mean, that's interesting to me.
Rocky won the championship here in 1984 in Leonard's car.
Yeah, that was a great time because there's very few people ever raced with less money than Leonard McCarl, ever. He built his own cars, he did his own motors, he did everything, and he could not afford to build a small block Chevy that could keep up. I mean, he couldn't do it. I mean, he wanted to race so bad, but Judy, his wife, just worked a regular job, and Leonard just worked in the garage every day. And so he built a aluminum big block and stroked it down to where it was within the rules, and that's what we ran because it was a big block and it had more horsepower and he could do it cheaper. And we run that motor all year, with a couple rebuilds, but still, he did it himself and did it his way.
Just got a message through that there are 3 or 4 cars parked in the high V and a few golf carts parked in reserved spots. The tow truck is being called, and I can tell you from first-hand experience, they are brutal this week. So if you think, I really hope there's not a Pella Ford Jeep being towed right now. So if you think that might be you, think really carefully, because I think it's like $200 to get your car back or something like that. So just think about that if you could. Van, you good? You didn't drive here, did you? You didn't drive here, did you?
Where's your car
Where's
parked?
the parking lot that it's an issue?
Mm.
Yes.
We'll do a whip around if it's your car being towed. It'll be okay, but...
All right, where did you say that cars are being towed? Because I've been in the wrong spot before.
Wherever you're parked, Steve Kinzer will end up there.
I think I'll be all right. He'll move me over.
Van, you are very active on Facebook. For a man in your era, and Rocky is the same, you're very good with your social media. Is that something that you just like following things? Because you had a lot of interest in your car build. A lot of people followed you doing that.
In regards to Facebook, I think it's kind of neat that, like, I've been on it for about 10 years, and I have re-communicated with people all over the country that otherwise I would have not had a chance to at all. I mean, I have people that I know in California that I could be in trouble somewhere and I could get on Facebook and Messenger and they could help. So and I have enjoyed being able to share like the build of my car and my trailer and stuff like that. If I could take a picture of it with my phone, that's something that's been very instrumental in being able to do this so much, is the technology with phones nowadays. You've got the ability to take pictures of everything, and you can document stuff, and I'm glad that I got a chance to share it, and a lot of people know about it that wouldn't have known about it at all otherwise.
It's cool, Rico, that guys like Van and Rocky are still seeking the sport out and watching so much streaming as well.
Yeah, I think that's it's really cool for the fans to see that stuff too, and these guys to be able to stay in touch with people that that they might never see it, because they're on the other side of the country or the world, and they were big fans of both of them. So. That's the power of social media and how it can keep people in touch, and that's the positive of it all is what's really good.
Will you be a winemaker one day? Like, is that the plan?
I like drinking it.
What is your go-to? What's your wine of choice?
I feel like when we go out to dinner, my father will. For those of you that don't know, he's. He started a business in 1980 that's a vineyard management business. So he takes care of people's vineyards in the Napa Valley, just a small little town that's about 32 miles wide, and 32 miles long in wine country in Northern California. And he farms people's vineyards for them. So we've grown up in the farming industry, and then he makes a little bit of wine on the side. And my brother and sister are heavily involved in the wine industry as well, and I'm getting the luxury to be able to race through this portion of my career, but I still stay firmly involved in what goes on at home. It's just it can be difficult at times from being away from it, but it is definitely something I have a lot of passion for, and be growing up around dirt and farming and makes me have a lot of appreciation for the guys that do the tracks at these racetracks, and it's a technique that these guys have to be able to prep a racetrack, and I love to be able to talk to them during the races and just see their next move that they make to hopefully we could adjust for our race car. But yes, I do like drinking wine, and I'm very lucky to be in this position.
What do you drink? What is your favorite if you were to choose?
So on the hot days, I like white wine, and when we go for a nice steak, I think the Cabernet Sauvignon is probably my favorite.
Cabernet Sauvignon. Your family was exposed to bushfires a couple of years back, quite frightening. And California is, unfortunately, you can set your watch by it. That was frightening. I remember you were battening down the hatches, and you got some really super cool stuff that was in danger at one point.
Yeah, very scary circumstances with the wildfires in California. It was, it was to the point where they were just focused on evacuating everybody, and my family kind of hunkered down and really wanted to protect our ranch, and we have some barns on our property that were built in the 1800s, and we store a lot of our equipment and some wine in those barns, so it was really important for us to stay and try to save those barns with garden hoses, and we just made sure we kept everything really moist around it, and the fire is something that obviously we don't mess with, and it was very interesting to see the change in the fire as it got to the moisture. When fire burns in the trees, it creates its own wind, and it's called a canopy fire. And when it got to the moisture near the barns in the forest land, it instantly stopped, and then it got it to a ground fire, which really what saved our barns.
We were talking before about merch before Rocky, weren't we? About how many T-shirts designs in a year would you have had that Tony collected compared to Rico's got over 100 different items? How many would you have had?
Well, we had one a year, and when we did, it was a risk to order a whole 12 dozen shirts, and I think about that now and what they must order at one time to go to one event would be staggering. But 144 shirts, and they would last us a long time, because everybody just couldn't afford to buy them, or whatever the situation might be. You might not be hot that night, let's say, and they only could buy one shirt, so they'd go to the winner and buy a shirt if we didn't win, or they might already have one. But yeah, we would only have one shirt a year and a limited quantity.
Tony knows, and I'm not being a smarty pants, Tony knows every era of your career. But the vivid one for me is the Got a Race. I just remember even in Australia, the 8H Got a Race thing. That was a cultural shift in a T-shirt brand and in a race brand. How did that come about?
Well, Carl Korbacher, which owns Arizona Sports Shirts, and I connected very early in my career, and that was his company, it's his trademark, and he said, I want to be a part of you and your deal, and that was just something that we were fortunate enough through that connection, and he's still a good friend today. And the brand has grown tremendously. Was fortunate enough to have him come along and stay loyal to us, and we stayed very loyal to him, and he just was always there, and it was just something that just happened through racing, it just a friendship there that stemmed and still thriving.
Tie-dye T-shirts, Wade. That was the first Gotta Race T-shirt I had was a tie-dye one, in case you were curious. But
I had a young boy bring one up yesterday at the autograph signing, a brand new tie-dye Gotta Race shirt.
I was going to bring him along, but again, I didn't want to embarrass myself. But I've got several. I had my senior picture taken in a 5M T-shirt when you drove the Merrill car. So there's been some really iconic cars. We talk about that, a lot, Wade. The things that you recognize about a race car, whether it's the color or a sponsor, and you talk about the United Express line car, the U2. That's a very famous car that a lot of guys drove. Rocky drove that car, and it's those kind of things that you remember. But they all made great T-shirts, right? And we've all had that, right? You got to have the new T-shirt, and when Rico comes out with a new T-shirt, people line up to get them and stuff. But it was different back then, when Rocky was racing, and probably Van, you too. But Rocky may only have one T-shirt in that season, but I probably bought 8 of them, because it's like, well, I got to have a new one, and so you go to the pits because you won that night. Well, I got to have another one, but so it's different, right? It's a different time, and guys like Rico, it's you got to plan for that, right? You got to plan out your T-shirt designs and big races coming up in an event T-shirt.
Yeah, and I feel like these shirts, they become collectibles, and that's why it's really important for us to have different options for people, and we get the luxury to be able to travel to so many different racetracks and different fans and seeing different people, and you want those diverse items of products that people have the option to buy.
Like a mullet hat.
Yeah.
I was just going to say.
That was
The mullet hat.
inspirational. Where did that come from?
A friend of mine actually gave me the idea once I had the mullet, and that we could, we contact a group of people that were able to stitch the hair in the back of a hat, and it really, just took off at the Chili Bowl one year.
Some drivers say they won't wear their own shirts, like it's the wrong thing to do. Rocky, were you like that?
I was.
Why?
I don't know.
Is it because Tony had them all, or you didn't?
Yeah, I didn't have any left. But no, I never was one that wore my own shirts, and still don't to this day. I have some that I've just kept and collected, a few, not many, but it was just something that I felt kind of weird about. Today it's commonplace. Everybody, any driver. Of course, today we wear our company logos and et cetera, but back then it was just something we didn't do, or I didn't do.
Rico, I see you wearing your gear, which I think it's cool. I know drivers don't do it because it's just not seen sometimes to be something they want to do, but there could not be a better advertisement than an athlete wearing his own apparel. Yeah,
and I think it's, it's different. So this is a more of a team shirt or a crew shirt, and I would be probably a little bit sensitive about wearing a race car Rico Abreu shirt because I guess I'm not cool enough, for that. But
it feels weird.
Yeah, it's but I think the branding and the logo and your sponsors on the shirt is really impactful, and partners getting to see that is really important for the sponsors.
Van, what have you got this week? What's going on for you? What are you doing at the Hall of Fame, and what are your plans?
Well, I was supposed to sign autographs, I think, tomorrow sometime. And I didn't come prepared with T-shirts because I only have one left. And I was considered wearing it. I've never worn a Van May shirt ever myself. I was considered wearing it because it's the last one, and I was considered doing it. But I probably a little bit like Rocky would feel conspicuous, or I don't know what word, but I would feel funny wearing my own shirt. But I do have some posters left from the one of one car that I have in the museum across the street. I have some posters of the exact car, and more than likely tomorrow when I'm signing autographs, I'm going to distribute some of these posters.
How much will you drive that race car when you go back, and how much have you driven it so far? And are you doing it? Are you gassing it up? Justin can just hold that up and look spectacular. Just walk around the room like a ring girl if you could, Justin. That'd be great. How much will you race that or hot lap that car?
I probably won't get it back like I had planned on bringing it back, but there's a good possibility that they will transport it back, and there's a Weldon Sterner Memorial Race going to happen the 14th of October, which is their last race, and I probably will get a chance to run it there, but I don't really have any plans. It's like I said before, my life is not very planned. So if I get an opportunity to run it, all I need to do is push it off.
Yeah, it's still got the gas in the tank right now, doesn't it?
Can I admit that?
Hell yeah, you can admit that.
It does have methanol in the tank, and and if I got a push truck, I could run it right now.
Can you imagine? You could just light it up as you went past Steve Kinz's motorhome.
You know, I got a chance to run it a couple of times this year, and it was fun just because that's one reason I race sprint cars. They were fun, but it's amazing how much relative horsepower they have now versus what my car was. I would say, unrealistically, to think that I had half as much horsepower as what they do now.
Would you like to try a skid in say, a 2023 spec car and just feel it?
Yeah, it might be fun for a second, but it's always fun to play with horsepower.
What about you, Rocky? Would you like to try a 23 spec just on your own, just to feel the difference?
Well, yeah, a big part of me, yes. Because I've oftentimes said, and I've had many opportunities to go and play, let's say, but yeah, it would be, I would do it. I would probably do it to be able to go to a track where I couldn't endanger anybody's equipment or an issue and just go run a few laps to show how stupid I look and you know, and what I've lost. But it would be amazing to feel the difference. And the cars are relatively the same, pretty much, but the horsepower and the engines and stuff are staggering big changes as far as. But yes, I would consider it. Yeah.
Tony, can you not organise that?
Well, now that I know he wants to, I'll get to work on it.
Van, are you a Texan or are you Pennsylvanian?
I'd say I'm a Texan forever. I mean, I lived in Pennsylvania more of my life than I lived in Texas, but I suspect I'm a Texan.
There is a difference.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but I identify as a Texan.
Identify.
Good job, man.
That is the mic drop comment of the morning right there.
I just wish it wasn't funny. Rico, how you feeling this week, man? You are fast. I mean fast.
My car's got some speed, man. It's been a pleasure to just get here to Knoxville, and we focused on the 360, coming to the 360 Nationals this year, and you know, just putting in a serious effort to try to have a shot at winning this thing tomorrow night.
So, what would that mean?
It would definitely mean everything to me. This is what I dreamed of when I realized I could become a race car driver and at the highest level. You know, I honestly never thought I would be in this position because of how difficult it is to race at these speeds and just to you know, I knew there in the early days of my career how, you know, I struggled coming here and racing and being competitive, and it's honestly taken me you know, probably about 12 years to get good here. You know, I had a little bit of success everywhere else, and you know, here I just felt like the GPS fell off the dash, and when I would come here and race, and it's a very technical racetrack, so it just took me some time to figure out, and you know, what's really cool for, behind me is my team, and having my crew chief, I feel like is one of the best in the business.
Isn't it cool, Tony, how almost all of our racers are just known by their first name or their last name? And everyone knows Donnie, Rico, Larson, like everyone, Van, Rocky, Steve, Sammy, Wolf. No one ever says their full name.
Right. I think, in like late model racing, right, like almost every driver has a nickname. But I think that's what's cool about sprint car racing is sprint car drivers have done a unique job of setting themselves apart from other people. When you say Sheldon, everybody in the room knows who you're talking to, right, or talking about. And so that is a pretty cool thing because each of these drivers are not like the other, right? They're all very unique in their era that they raced or what they do on the racetrack. And so it is pretty cool that drivers can identify by their first name and everybody knows who they are.
Van, when you watch the racing here at Knoxville, how does that make you feel? Does it take you back, or do you miss it, or can you just appreciate it in its current day form that you're not hands-on, but you're still a big part of it?
Well, I appreciate how fast it actually has become. I have no desire whatsoever to race again because it's past time. But I do appreciate how talented they are to be able to race that close for that many laps generally without any issues. I was talking to somebody the first night how good everything was going, and about that time all hell broke loose and people started crashing. But I do appreciate how good it is and how good the racing actually is here right now with the best in the business. I mean, that Saturday night feature is gonna be pretty good.
Yeah.
And I am just a professional spectator at this point.
What was it? When it was time to pay out the money, I got to watch? That was a great line too.
Yeah, I'd like to say that as a race car driver, you watch the races a little different, I think, than the spectators, because you watch what the drivers are doing. You can sense, like you can tell kind of how they feel. And when you get a car and a driver that can operate like Rico was last night, you better watch out. It's like Bobby Allen, when he gets zoned in somewhere, there's a good chance that he, like shots last year. His car got zoned in, and it could drive off the bottom. Everybody's up there knocking the fence down and kicking dirt over the fence and risking their lives, which it's scary watching when you're on the outside looking in, but it's not doing it. But when you can get locked down like Rico, you're going to have one heck of a good A-main Saturday night.
I love that, absolutely. What I love about these things, Tony, is that I can see the respect that Rico has for Van and Rocky. I can see it in his eyes. And I can see the respect that Rocky and Van have for Rico. And they are generations apart. But they are so bonded by the pure passion of driving a sprint car. It's on your face so clear. You almost look as excited as Tony, and that's saying something. I mean, you got such respect for these guys, don't you?
Absolutely, and I just I just cherish these times spent with racers that are generations behind me, and I think I get to sit here and talk to these guys or listen to them talk and thought process through times of unbelievable memories I've had in racing, and then people get to watch us race and do what we love. But really, it's what is so interesting about the sport of racing for me is just to see the fans that come to the races and they bring their hard-earned money and spend it watching us do something that we love to do, and that's what's just so exciting about racing for me, and I idolize these guys because they were in the same position I'm in right now, and the success that they had in their careers. And I remember the first time I met Van was at Hagerstown Speedway, and he was running his car around the track because they had a vintage car race, I believe, and I just thought it was the coolest thing because of the history I heard about him and in Pennsylvania, and it's just a special time.
You know, our sport is so beautiful. If we were NBA fans or baseball or football, we wouldn't be able to just walk up and talk to the stars on the court, would we? Yet in our sport, you will bump into these guys at some point around here. They will take 2 hours to come and sit with you and tell stories in front of 200 people. That is the pure beauty. I can become friends with you, add me, Rico, on Facebook. I'm friends with Van, by the way. Thank you, Van. But you know what I mean? You can become friends with your heroes, right? You're living proof of it, Tony, all these years later.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's cool. And when you walk in the pits and you see these guys walking around that aren't racing today, but they have such strong memories of when they did race this event. And I think it brings some validity to this event, and because the Knoxville Nationals is nothing without the people that raced here over the years, right? And so when you see those guys here and you talk to them, just like Rocky said, they're looking for certain things on the racetrack to kind of assimilate what they went through when they raced here, and that's really cool to hear that they didn't just go away and just be like, oh yeah, it's just another race. Now they're here paying close attention, and that's super cool. I don't suspect that the football people and the basketball stars are watching how somebody bounces a ball, right? And so we're uniquely different in the people that we worship in our sport.
We have 2 balls in our sport. They only have 1. Jeff and Cheryl DeFoss, big thank you to you. Thank you so much. Doug, you came down to Australia and you saw this and you immediately said, hey, we got to have that back in Knoxville. Yeah. Doug Clark, everybody.
Thank you, Doug.
Oh, it moved. It isn't a statue. You could hang a sombrero over him and almost look like one of those things in El Paso for you out there, Van. Now, someone played the drums last year, Sammy Swindell. Any takers? No. Okay. Tony, it's been amazing yet again. These gentlemen are happy to stay for a little while to sign, but I know Rico's got to get back to stuff he's got to be doing as well. But it's an honor, Tony, isn't it?
It's the coolest part of the week. It really is, when we get to sit down and talk to the people that have built our sport up to what it is today, and getting to watch what Rico's done between the 360 Nationals, coming out of the B to finish 3rd. All he needed was for Reitzel to go down another foot and he'd have won the thing because they'd have crashed into Dingus flipping. But just getting to watch what he did last night and then to sit 5 feet from him and get to talk to him is a pretty special time. So I hope you guys all appreciate it as much as Wade and I do, because it's really cool.
Tone, you and I are living our dream, mate. Every day we get to do this, we are living our dream to hang out with people like this. But I got to say, the people in this room are the true beauty of this sport. The people that come here from all over the world or from all over Iowa, it doesn't matter whether you identify as a Texan or as an Iowan or a Californian or an Aussie or a Kiwi or a Pom or a South African, it doesn't matter. The real beauty of this sport are these people here, Tone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because without you guys coming here, there's no need for guys like Wade and I. And this we talked about Wednesday. I think there was more people here this year on a Wednesday night than we've had in a long time. And the racing has been so good. I'm glad that you were all here and didn't miss it, right? And last night was super great, and I think tonight's going to be good. But tomorrow night's feature is going to be really, really special. It's going to be unbelievable.
Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind just standing up for us, Rico and Van and Rocky. And if you wouldn't mind standing up, please, and putting your hands together for our 3 amazing guests today.
I'd like to say thank you to everybody here. This has been an honor.
I'd like to thank everybody for even remembering something that happened so long ago. It's hard to imagine. We were having fun, and people get to reminisce and tell the stories, and the stories generally get better in the retelling.
I think the one I remember is I went to Pennsylvania because my brother had the spares. That was pretty funny too. They will be signing for a little while. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to the church, to Judd. Thank you, Chris Crone up the back who films this all for us. Judd and all your team. And Fantastic job as well back there. Is the other van back there as well with all your help with the audio. Have a wonderful Nationals, everybody. Thank you for coming along.